Hello and welcome. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and prepare for a slow journey into the patient world of medieval craftsmanship. Tonight, we're going to explore what it truly meant to be an apprentice in a medieval guild, learning a single craft over the course of many years. This is not a story of excitement or adventure. There are no dramatic moments here, no sudden revelations or triumphs. Instead, we'll experience the reality of apprenticeship, day after day, week after week, year after year of repetitive practice, careful observation, patient learning, and gradual improvement. We'll understand what it meant to spend 7, 8, 9, or even 10 years mastering a single trade under the watchful eye of a master craftsman. Imagine it's 1380, and you're a boy of 12 or 13 years old in a thriving English town. Your father, perhaps a merchant or a small landowner, has arranged for you to become an apprentice to a master carpenter. This means that for the next 7 years, you will live with the master's family, work in his workshop, and slowly, very slowly, learn every aspect of the carpenter's trade. You arrive at the master's house on a cool morning in early spring. Your parents have signed the apprenticeship contract, paid the required fee, and now they're leaving you here, in this unfamiliar place, with these strangers who will shape your life for years to come. You're carrying a small bundle of clothes and personal items, everything you'll need for your new life. The workshop smells of wood shavings and linseed oil. Tools hang on the walls, their purposes mysterious to you. The master is a stern but fair-looking man in his 40s, his hands marked by decades of work. There are 2 journeymen here too, skilled craftsmen who work for the master, and another apprentice, a few years older than you, who eyes you with a mixture of superiority and perhaps sympathy. This will be your world now, this workshop, this house, this master and his family. For 7 years, you will wake here, work here, eat here, sleep here, and slowly, patiently, learn what it means to be a carpenter. Let's begin this long, slow journey together. The first year of apprenticeship is not what most people imagine. There is no immediate teaching of skills, no hands-on training with tools, no creation of even simple objects. Instead, the first year is about observation, about the most basic tasks, about learning to exist within the workshop's hierarchy and rhythms. Your day begins before dawn. You wake in the small room you share with the other apprentice, a space barely large enough for 2 straw mattresses on the floor. The room is cold, and you dress quickly in the dim pre-dawn light, pulling on the same rough wool clothing you wear every day. Your master's house is attached to the workshop, and you can already hear sounds from below. The master and his journeyman are starting their day. Your first task, every single morning, is to open the shutters and sweep the workshop. This seems like a simple chore, almost beneath notice, but you will do it for years, and there is more to it than appears. You sweep in a particular pattern, starting from the back and moving toward the door, ensuring that you don't scatter dust over areas that have already been cleaned. You sweep gently near the workbenches, where delicate work might be in progress. You collect the wood shavings carefully, because they're valuable for starting fires. After sweeping, you bring fresh water from the well. Multiple trips are required, filling the buckets that the household and workshop will need throughout the day. Your shoulders ache from carrying the heavy buckets, but you're building strength. In winter, the well water is so cold it hurts your hands. In summer, the trips are hot and sweaty. But every day, the water must be fetched. Once the workshop is clean and water is available, you help prepare the workspace for the day's work. This means ensuring tools are in their proper places, that the workbenches are cleared and ready, that wood stocks are accessible. You don't use these tools yet, but you're learning where everything belongs. You're learning the geography of the workshop, the logic of its organization. The master and journeyman begin their work, and you watch. This is your primary task in the first year: to watch, to observe, to pay attention to everything happening around you. You're not doing nothing. Your eyes are learning, even if your hands are not yet skilled enough to participate. You watch as the master marks measurements on a piece of wood. You notice how he holds the marking knife, the angle at which he draws it across the surface, the care he takes to ensure accuracy. You watch as a journeyman saws wood, seeing the rhythm of his movements, the way he lets the saw's weight do most of the work, the slight adjustments he makes to keep the cut straight. You watch joints being cut, mortise and tenon joints, dovetails, lap joints. These names mean nothing to you at first, but you hear them repeated, you see them demonstrated, and gradually you begin to understand what makes each joint different, what each is used for. You're building a mental library of techniques, even though you can't yet execute them yourself. Watching might sound easy, but it requires discipline. Your mind wanders. You're a young person, and standing still, just observing, is difficult. But the master notices when your attention drifts. A sharp word brings you back. Pay attention, boy. You'll need to know this. So you focus again, forcing yourself to watch, to remember, to learn through observation. Between periods of observation, you do the simple, repetitive tasks that require no skill. You're sent to gather wood shavings from under the benches and carry them to the fire. You hold boards steady while a journeyman planes them, your job being simply to apply pressure so the wood doesn't shift. You fetch tools when requested, learning their names and purposes as you do. Bring me the draw knife. You have to know what that is, where it's kept, and bring it quickly. You mix glue. This is one of your regular tasks throughout your apprenticeship. Hide glue must be prepared fresh each day, and it's a task suitable for even a beginning apprentice. You take pieces of dried hide glue, add water, and heat the mixture gently in a pot set in hot water. The glue must be the right consistency, not too thick, not too thin. You learn this through trial and error, and through criticism when you get it wrong. Too thin, boy. It'll never hold. Do it again. You sand wood. This is work that requires patience but not much skill, making it perfect for first-year apprentices. You're given a piece of wood that's been shaped and worked, but needs smoothing. Using progressively finer grades of sandpaper or abrasive stones, you rub the surface in long, even strokes. Your arms grow tired. The motion is repetitive, almost meditative, but you're learning to feel the wood, to notice when it's smooth, to recognize quality of surface. This seemingly simple task is teaching your hands and your sense of touch. You learn to sharpen tools, though you're not yet allowed to use them. Sharpening is critical. Dull tools are dangerous and produce poor work. You watch the master demonstrate the proper angle for holding a chisel against the sharpening stone, the motion used to draw the blade across it. Then you practice, under supervision, with older, less critical tools. Back and forth, maintaining the correct angle. It takes weeks before you can consistently sharpen a tool to the master's satisfaction. Meals are taken with the master's family. As the youngest apprentice, you sit at the end of the table, served last, eating quickly and quietly. The master's wife treats you with neither warmth nor coldness. You're simply part of the household now, another mouth to feed, another body taking up space. Her children, if she has any, might tease you or ignore you. You're simultaneously part of the family and separate from it, an outsider who lives inside. The food is simple: bread, pottage, cheese, small beer. On good days, there might be meat. On ordinary days, not. You eat what's provided without complaint, because complaint would be seen as ingratitude. You're being housed, fed, and trained. That is the arrangement. and you're the one who benefits most from it. After the midday meal, work resumes. The afternoon is much like the morning. Observation, simple tasks, learning by watching. You might be sent on errands, delivering a finished piece to a customer, purchasing supplies from another craftsman, carrying messages. These errands teach you the town, introduce you to the network of craftspeople and merchants, show you how business is conducted. When you deliver a finished piece to a customer, you watch how the master interacts with them. You hear how he explains the work, points out the quality of joints, demonstrates the smooth operation of a door or drawer. You see money change hands, though you're too young and too new to handle financial transactions yourself. But you're learning that craftsmanship exists not just for its own sake, but in service of customers who pay for work. Late afternoon might bring different tasks. In winter, you spend time feeding the fire that heats the workshop, ensuring it never goes out entirely because starting it fresh is time-consuming. In summer, you might help with garden work in the small plot behind the house, growing vegetables for the household. These tasks seem unrelated to carpentry, but they're part of being a member of this household, part of the comprehensive education of living and working within this community. As evening approaches, you help clean the workshop again, putting away tools, sweeping up the day's accumulated sawdust and shavings, preparing the space for the next day. The tools must be cleaned and stored properly. Wood must be covered to protect it from moisture. Everything must be in order, because disorder leads to mistakes, inefficiency, and accidents. After supper, there might be a brief period of leisure, though for you, this often means more observation. The master might work on a personal project or repair household items, and you watch these activities too. Sometimes the journeyman tells stories or jokes, and you listen, learning the culture of craftsmen, the humour and the wisdom that gets passed down through generations. Then it's to bed, exhausted from a day of being on your feet, of constant movement and attention, even if you didn't do any skilled work. You lie on your straw mattress, perhaps reviewing in your mind what you saw that day, what you learned. The other apprentice might talk to you about the work, might give you advice or warnings about the master's temperament. Or he might be too tired to talk, and you both simply sleep. And tomorrow, it will be the same. The same sweeping, the same water fetching, the same observation and simple tasks. And the day after that, and the day after that. This is your first year, and it passes slowly, each day much like the one before, each week blending into the next. You're not becoming a carpenter yet. You're becoming someone who understands what it means to be in a workshop, who knows the rhythms and requirements of the craft, even if your own skills are still minimal. There are no tests, no clear markers of progress. But gradually, without quite realizing when it happened, you start to understand things. You can identify tools by sight and name. You can predict what the master will need next and have it ready. You begin to see the logic in how a piece of furniture is constructed, why certain joints are used in certain places. You're learning, but the learning is so gradual, so incremental, that it's hard to identify specific moments of advancement. The first year feels endless while you're living it. You sometimes wonder if you'll ever be allowed to actually make something, to use the tools yourself, to do real work. But the master knows what he's doing. He's trained many apprentices before you. First, you must learn to observe, to understand, to exist properly within the workshop. The handwork will come, but only when you're ready. And in the master's judgment, that time has not yet arrived. As you enter your second year of apprenticeship, a subtle shift occurs. You're still doing many of the same basic tasks, sweeping, fetching, mixing glue. But now, occasionally, you're allowed to touch the tools. Not the finest tools, not for important work, but you begin to develop basic hand skills with wood. Your first real woodworking task is planing. A journeyman sets you up with a piece of scrap wood clamped to a workbench in a plane, showing you how to hold it, how to push it along the grain of the wood, how to adjust the blade depth, keep it steady, even pressure. Let the plane do the work. It sounds simple, but it's not. Your first attempts are clumsy. The plane catches and stutters. The shavings come off in uneven chunks rather than smooth curls. Your strokes wander offline. The surface you're creating is rough and irregular. The journeyman watches, occasionally offering a correction, but mostly letting you struggle because this is how you learn. Again, he says when you've made a mess of the practice piece, start over. So you do. You take another piece of scrap wood and try again, and again, and again. For days, you practice this one simple operation, planing a board smooth. Your arms and shoulders ache from the unaccustomed motion. Blisters form on your hands where the plane's handle rubs. But gradually, slowly, you begin to improve. The shavings become more regular. The surface becomes smoother. It takes weeks before the master examines your work and grudgingly acknowledges it's acceptable. Once you can plane adequately, you're taught to saw straight lines. Again, this sounds simple, but it requires skill and practice. You're given a piece of wood with a line marked on it and told to saw along the line. The saw wants to wander. Your muscles aren't used to the motion. You press too hard or not hard enough. The cut goes offline and the piece is ruined. Watch the line, not the saw, the journeyman tells you. Let the saw find its path. Guide it, don't force it. This advice makes no sense at first. How can you guide something without forcing it? But as you practice, as you make dozens, then hundreds of cuts, you begin to understand. There's a feel to it, a sense of when the saw is cutting true and when it's fighting you. You practice these basic operations for months, planing, sawing, chiseling simple cuts under close supervision. Every piece you work on is scrap or practice material. Nothing you make is good enough to be used in actual projects. Your work is clumsy, imprecise, marked by mistakes and rough edges. But the master sees progress that you can't see yourself. Your cuts are getting straighter. Your surfaces are getting smoother. You're developing the muscle memory and the feel for the tools. During this time, you're still watching the more skilled work being done around you. Now, though, your observation has context. When you see a journeyman cut a mortise, you've at least used a chisel yourself, even if your own mortises are crude and inaccurate. You can appreciate the skill involved because you've attempted it yourself and failed. This makes your observation more valuable. You're not just seeing, you're understanding. In your third year, you begin to work on actual projects, though in the most peripheral way. A large cabinet is being built, and you're assigned to make some of the interior shelving, simple boards that will be hidden inside, where imperfections won't be visible. This is your first real contribution to a finished piece, even though your work is the least important part of it. You measure the space carefully, mark the wood, saw it to length, plane the edges smooth. Every step is checked by a journeyman before you proceed to the next. Measure twice, cut once. He reminds you when you're about to make a cut. This wisdom becomes ingrained in you. Mistakes waste material, and wasted material is expensive. Precision matters, not just for quality but for economy. Your shelf boards are acceptable, though not beautiful. They fit into the cabinet, they do their job, and if someone looks closely, they'll see the slight wavering of your saw cuts, the places where your planing wasn't quite even. But they're hidden inside, and they work. You feel a small sense of pride, quickly tempered when you see the master's smooth, perfect work on the visible parts of the same cabinet. You also begin making pegs and wedges, small components used in joinery. These seem like trivial items, but they require precision. A peg must be exactly the right size to fit its hole. Too loose, and it won't hold. Too tight, and it might split the wood. You learn to work to a specific size, to measure carefully, to adjust your technique to achieve consistency. Making hundreds of pegs is tedious work, but it's teaching you precision and consistency. Each peg must be like the others. Each must be smooth, straight, and exact. You develop the ability to work to a tolerance, to reproduce the same result again and again. These skills seem mundane, but they're fundamental to all woodworking. You're also learning to maintain tools. Sharpening is a daily activity now. Before starting work, you check your plane blade, your chisels, your saw. You sharpen as needed, which is often. Sharp tools make the work easier and safer. Dull tools require more force, and that force can cause the tool to slip, potentially causing injury. You've seen journeymen cut themselves with dull tools and heard the master's angry response. A sharp tool in skilled hands is safer than a dull tool in any hands. The workshop's daily rhythm is deeply familiar to you now. You can anticipate the flow of work, can predict when certain tasks will need doing, can prepare materials before they're requested. You're becoming efficient, learning to think ahead, to see the next steps in a project. This efficiency is valued more than you initially realized. A workshop runs smoothly when everyone anticipates needs, rather than just responding to requests. Your relationship with the master and journeyman is evolving. You're no longer the completely ignorant newcomer. You have some skills now, limited but real. The master is less harsh when you make mistakes, though he's never gentle. Mistakes are teaching opportunities, but they're also problems that waste time and materials. You're expected to learn from each mistake, to not repeat the same error. The journeymen sometimes ask you to help with more substantial tasks. You might hold a piece steady while a complex joint is cut, positioned precisely where needed, maintaining exact pressure and position for minutes at a time. This seems like a simple supporting role, but it's crucial. If you move, if you let the piece shift, the joint will be ruined. You're learning to be reliable, to be trusted, with important supporting work. You also begin learning about wood itself, not just how to work it, but how to select it, evaluate it, understand its properties. Different woods have different characteristics. Oak is strong and durable but hard to work. Pine is softer and easier but less durable. The master shows you how to read the grain, how to identify defects that might cause problems, how to orient wood in a project to take advantage of its natural strength. When new lumber arrives at the workshop, you help stack and store it properly. Wood must be kept dry and allowed to season. Green wood, newly cut, is still full of moisture and will warp and crack as it dries. Seasoned wood, dried properly over months or years, is stable and workable. You learn to recognize the difference by weight, by appearance, by feel. This knowledge seems abstract, but it affects every piece of work the workshop produces. You're also learning about the business of craftsmanship. When customers come to discuss commissions, you listen. You hear how the master negotiates, explaining what can be done, what time frame is realistic, what the cost will be. You see how he manages customer expectations, how he balances their desires with what's actually practical and affordable. Craftsmanship isn't just about making things, it's about making things that serve people's needs and that they're willing to pay for. Guild meetings happen periodically, and as an apprentice, you might attend some of them. The guild is the organization that controls the craft in your town. It sets standards, regulates who can practice the trade, settles disputes, and maintains the craft's reputation. You're not a full member yet. That won't happen until you complete your apprenticeship and become a journeyman. But you're learning about this larger world of organized craft. At guild meetings, you see other masters, other journeymen, other apprentices. You realize your experience is not unique. There are many like you, learning the same trade, going through the same slow progression of skills. There's a kind of solidarity in this, a shared experience of patient, gradual learning. Years 2 and 3 pass more quickly than year 1 did. You have more to do, more to engage your mind and hands. The days are still long, the work is still repetitive, but there's variation now. Sometimes you're doing basic tasks, sometimes you're practicing skills, occasionally you're contributing to real work. The blend makes time pass more quickly, though you're still very far from being a skilled craftsman. By the end of year 3, you can work wood competently at a basic level. You can plane a board smooth and flat. You can saw accurately. You can cut simple joints under supervision. You can identify different woods and select appropriate material for a project. These are real skills, but they're just the foundation. The deeper skills, the ability to design, to problem solve, to execute complex joinery, to create furniture that's not just functional but beautiful, these are still far beyond you. You're perhaps a quarter of the way through your apprenticeship, and you've only just begun to touch real woodworking. The journey ahead is still long. The middle years of your apprenticeship represent a shift from basic competence to developing precision and consistency. You've learned the fundamental operations. Now you must learn to perform them well, reliably, and efficiently. Your 4th year begins with a focus on joinery, the art of connecting pieces of wood together. You've seen joints cut countless times, you've attempted simple ones under close supervision, but now you'll dedicate hundreds of hours to mastering this essential skill. The quality of joints determines the quality of the entire piece. Weak joints mean furniture that won't last. Visible gaps mean work that looks amateurish. Perfect joints, tight and strong and nearly invisible, are the mark of a true craftsman. You start with the most common joint, the mortise and tenon. This joint consists of a rectangular hole, mortise, cut into one piece of wood, and a matching rectangular protrusion, tenon, cut on another piece. When fitted together properly, this joint is incredibly strong and durable. But making it properly requires precision in multiple dimensions. The mortise must be the right width, depth, and position. You learn to mark it out carefully with a mortise gauge, a specialized tool that scores parallel lines into the wood. Then you cut it, using chisels to remove wood gradually. This can't be rushed. You tap the chisel with a mallet, cutting a little deeper each time, removing small amounts of wood. If you're impatient and try to cut too much at once, the chisel will bind or slip, potentially splitting the wood or cutting irregularly. The tenon must match the mortise exactly. You mark it using a marking gauge, scribe lines showing exactly what needs to be cut away. Then you saw carefully along these lines, creating the shoulders and cheeks of the tenon. Each cut must be precise. If the tenon is too large, it won't fit in the mortise. Too small, and the joint will be weak and loose. The goal is a fit that's tight enough to require firm pressure to assemble, but not so tight that it might split the wood. You make dozens of practice joints. At first, most are failures. The mortise is crooked, or the wrong depth. The tenon is uneven, or poorly squared. The pieces fit together loosely, or won't fit at all. Each failure is a lesson. Each mistake teaches you something. To mark more carefully, to saw more precisely, to cut more patiently. The scrapwood pile grows as you ruin piece after piece, but your skills are gradually improving. After weeks of practice, you finally make a joint that satisfies the master. It fits together smoothly, requires moderate pressure to assemble, and shows no gaps when assembled. Acceptable, he says, which is high praise from him. But one good joint doesn't mean you've mastered the skill. Consistency is what matters. Can you make the next joint as good, and the one after that? You move on to other types of joints. Dovetails, lap joints, bridle joints, half-blind dovetails. Each has its own technique, its own challenges, its own applications. Dovetails are particularly demanding because they interlock in a way that requires great precision. The pins and tails must fit together perfectly. There's no room for error, and gaps are immediately obvious. You spend months practicing dovetails, and they remain challenging even after extensive practice. During these years, you begin taking on more complete components of projects. Not entire pieces yet, but substantial parts. Perhaps you'll make the sides of a chest, while a journeyman makes the more complex top and front. Perhaps you'll construct a simple stool while the master works on an elaborate chair. Your work is still supervised and checked, but you're trusted with more responsibility. This brings a new kind of pressure. When you were just practicing, mistakes were learning opportunities. Now, mistakes are wasted materials and wasted time on real projects. You must be more careful, more thorough in checking your work before proceeding. You learn to inspect your own work critically, to catch problems before someone else points them out. You also begin learning about finishing, the process of treating wood surfaces after the construction is complete. Raw wood is pale and rough. Finishing makes it smooth, brings out the grain's beauty, and protects the wood from moisture and wear. This involves sanding, which you already know, but must now do to a higher standard, followed by applying various treatments. You learn to apply linseed oil, rubbing it into the wood with a cloth, watching it darken and enhance the grain. The oil must be worked in thoroughly, excess wiped away, the surface buffed to a soft glow. This is meditative work, repetitive rubbing in circular motions. The wood gradually becoming more beautiful under your hands. It's satisfying in a way that cutting and joining isn't. You're making something genuinely beautiful, not just functional. You also learn about stains and dyes, how to color wood to match specific requirements or customer preferences. Different woods take stains differently. The master shows you test pieces, demonstrating how to achieve even coverage, how to avoid blotching, how to build up color gradually through multiple applications. You practice on scrap, learning to mix stains, to apply them evenly, to understand how wet stain looks versus how it will look when dry. Some projects require painting, and you learn this too. Wood must be properly prepared, then primed, then painted in thin, even coats. Each coat must dry completely before the next is applied. This requires patience and attention to detail. Drips, runs, and uneven coverage are visible flaws that mark amateur work. You practice painting techniques until you can create smooth, uniform surfaces. During your 4th and 5th years, you also become more involved in customer interactions. You're not negotiating or managing projects yet, but you might deliver finished work, answer basic questions, or take simple messages. You're representing the workshop now, and how you conduct yourself reflects on the master. You learn to be polite, respectful, and clear in your communication. You also begin to see how different customers have different needs and expectations. Some want the finest work and are willing to pay for it. Others need functional pieces made quickly and cheaply. The master teaches you that both are legitimate needs, and good craftsmen serve both markets. The skill is in understanding what level of finish is appropriate for each job, not wasting time on perfection where it's not needed, but delivering quality where it matters. The workshop's seasonal rhythms become clear to you during these years. There are busy seasons when many projects are underway simultaneously, when everyone works long hours, when the workshop buzzes with activity. There are slower seasons when work is scarce, when time is spent on maintenance, tool making, and working through the backlog of smaller repairs and projects that accumulated during busy times. You learn that being a craftsman isn't just about the craft itself. It's about managing the business aspects too. The master tracks expenses carefully. The cost of wood and materials, the cost of maintaining the workshop, the guild fees, taxes, and household expenses. All of this must be covered by what customers pay. If the master charges too little, the workshop can't sustain itself. If he charges too much, customers go elsewhere. Finding the balance is part of the master's skill. You also become aware of the competitive aspects of the craft. There are other carpenters in town, other workshops. They're not exactly enemies, but they're competitors for the same pool of customers. Guild regulations prevent outright hostility and maintain certain standards. But within those bounds, each workshop competes on reputation, quality, and price. You hear the master occasionally speak of other masters with respect or criticism, evaluating their work, their business practices, their standing in the community. During these years, your physical strength and stamina have matured significantly. You're no longer a boy but a young man, capable of sustained physical labor. The work that exhausted you in your first year is now routine. You can work a full day without fatigue becoming a limiting factor. Your hands have become thoroughly calloused, your arms and shoulders strong from the constant motion of planes and saws. You've also developed what might be called a craftsman's eye, the ability to look at a piece of furniture and evaluate its construction, to see quality or flaws, to understand how it was made and whether it's well made. When you see furniture in customers' homes or in other contexts, you automatically assess it. This piece has nice dovetails. That one has visible gaps in the joinery. This table will last for generations. That chair will wobble and fail within years. You're thinking like a craftsman now, not just working like one. Your relationship with the master has become more professional and less parental. He treats you less like a child, who must be taught everything, and more like a junior colleague who's expected to know and execute standard operations without constant supervision. He might assign you a task, make these draw sides, and expect you to complete it properly without step-by-step guidance. This trust is earned through demonstrated competence, and it represents real progress. The other apprentices and journeymen in the workshop are your companions now. You work alongside them, you eat with them, you occasionally socialize with them. The strict hierarchy remains, master above journeyman, journeyman above apprentices, but within that structure, there's camaraderie. You share the experience of the work, the satisfactions and frustrations, the stories and jokes that make the long hours more bearable. You're also more involved in training any newer apprentices who enter the workshop. You might be asked to show a new boy how to sweep properly, how to mix glue, how to sharpen a chisel. This teaching reinforces your own knowledge and gives you insight into what the master and journeyman were doing when they trained you. You realize how much patience it took to let you stumble through tasks that they could do in a fraction of the time. By the end of your 5th year, you're a competent woodworker. You can execute most standard operations reliably. You can make furniture components that meet professional standards. You understand joinery, finishing, wood selection, and the basics of furniture construction. If someone asked you to make a simple table or chest, you could do it, though it would take you longer than a master or journeyman, and the result would be good rather than exceptional. But you're still not finished with your apprenticeship. There are skills and knowledge you still lack. The ability to design pieces independently, to solve unusual problems, to work efficiently without supervision, to handle complex projects from start to finish. These are the skills that separate journeymen and masters from competent apprentices, and learning them will take more years still. The final years of your apprenticeship are about refinement, independence, and preparation for the transition from apprentice to journeyman. You've learned the skills. Now you must perfect them and learn to work autonomously. Your 6th year begins with increased responsibility. The master now assigns you complete small projects to execute from start to finish. We need a step stool for the baker. Go see what he wants, measure the space, design something appropriate, and build it. This simple instruction represents a significant shift. You're not just executing someone else's design, you're creating your own. You visit the baker, discuss his needs, measure the space where the stool will be used. Back at the workshop, you sketch a simple design, considering height, stability, ease of construction, and material costs. You show your design to the master, who might suggest improvements or approve it as is. Then you select wood, mark out the pieces, cut them, join them, and finish the stool. Every step is your responsibility, though the master might glance at your work occasionally to ensure you're not making serious mistakes. This independence is both liberating and frightening. There's satisfaction in seeing a project through from conception to completion, in making decisions about design and construction, but there's also the weight of responsibility. If the stool is poorly made, if it wobbles or breaks, it reflects on the workshop's reputation. The master trusted you with this, and you must justify that trust. You make more of these small projects throughout your 6th year. Stools, simple boxes, basic shelves, small tables. Each one teaches you something about design, about choosing appropriate techniques, about estimating time and materials. You're learning the full cycle of craftsmanship, not just the physical work, but the thinking that precedes and guides it. You're also learning to work more efficiently. In your early years, everything took you much longer than it took skilled craftsmen. You measured repeatedly, uncertain of your marks. You cut slowly, afraid of mistakes. You checked your work obsessively. Now, with years of experience, you're faster and more confident. You can measure accurately and trust your marks. You can cut decisively. You still check your work, but you do it efficiently rather than obsessively. This efficiency is important because time is money in a workshop. A master can charge more for work because he completes it quickly and well. A slow worker, even if their work is good quality, is less profitable. You're learning to balance quality with efficiency, to know when to take your time and when to work more quickly, to be thorough without being wasteful of time. During these final years, you also learn about the broader world of the craft. You might travel with the master or a journeyman to other towns to deliver large pieces, to purchase specialized materials, or to see particularly fine examples of craftsmanship. These trips expose you to different styles, different techniques, different approaches to the same craft. You see that while basic techniques are universal, there's room for variation and innovation. You also attend more guild functions, now as a soon-to-be journeyman rather than a mere apprentice. You're introduced to other masters, you hear discussions about guild business, you begin to understand the social and economic framework within which craftsmen operate. The guild isn't just an organization, it's a community, a support system, and a regulatory body that maintains standards and protects its members' interests. You learn about the politics of the guild, the rivalries between prominent masters, the debates over regulations, the balance between maintaining high standards and allowing enough practitioners to meet the town's needs. You realize that becoming a journeyman won't just be about your skills. It will be about being accepted into this community, about building your reputation within it. The master begins teaching you about the business aspects of the craft in more detail. He shows you how he keeps accounts, tracking income and expenses. He explains how to estimate the cost of a project, factoring in materials, time, and overhead. He discusses how to negotiate with customers, how to handle complaints, how to build and maintain a customer base. This knowledge is as important as woodworking skills because even the finest craftsman must make a living. You're also learning about the limits and possibilities of the craft. Some things that customers ask for are impractical or impossible. Some beautiful designs are structurally weak. Some projects that seem simple are actually complex, and vice versa. You're developing judgment about what can and should be done, learning to guide customers towards solutions that are both satisfying and practical. In your 7th year, you're functioning almost as a journeyman already. You work independently on most projects, consulting the master only for unusual situations or final approval. You're productive, reliable, contributing significantly to the workshop's output. The master might take on additional or more complex projects because he knows you can handle the routine work without constant supervision. You begin thinking about your masterpiece, the final project that will demonstrate your competence and earn you recognition as a journeyman. Different guilds have different requirements, but typically you must create something that showcases your full range of skills. This project will be judged by master craftsmen from the guild, and their assessment will determine whether you're ready to become a journeyman. You discuss ideas with the master, considering what would best demonstrate your abilities. Perhaps an elaborate joined chest with complex joinery, decorative carving, and fine finishing. Perhaps a chair with turned legs, curved components, and comfortable proportions. Whatever you choose must be challenging enough to prove your skills, but not so ambitious that you risk failure. You begin work on your masterpiece during your final year of apprenticeship, often in your limited free time, because it's your personal project rather than workshop business. Every aspect must be perfect. The measurements must be precise, the joints tight, the surface flawlessly smooth, the finish rich and even. You're judged not just on whether you can complete the project, but on the quality of every detail. Working on your masterpiece is different from routine workshop projects. There's no customer satisfaction to consider, no deadline to meet, no budget to work within. The only goal is quality, demonstrating that you've mastered the craft. You spend hours on details that might take minutes on a commercial project. You plane surfaces until they're absolutely flat. You fit joints until they're perfectly tight. You sand until your arms ache, and the surface is like silk. This intensive work reveals any remaining weaknesses in your skills. Perhaps your dovetails are still slightly uneven, and you must practice them further. Perhaps your finishing technique needs refinement. You work on these weak points, practicing, improving, refusing to settle for good enough, because your masterpiece must be exemplary. The master watches your progress occasionally, offering advice or correction. He knows what the guild judges will look for, what standards they'll apply. His criticism is sharp because your masterpiece reflects on him too. You're his apprentice, trained in his workshop, and if you fail, it suggests his training was inadequate. As your 7th year draws to a close, your masterpiece nears completion. The structure is complete, the joints are perfect, the surface is smooth. Now comes the finishing, the final stage that will bring out the wood's beauty and protect your work. You apply oil or varnish in thin coats, allowing each to dry completely before adding the next. The wood darkens and glows under the finish, the grain patterns becoming vivid and beautiful. Finally, it's done. Your masterpiece stands complete, representing 7 years of learning, countless hours of practice, thousands of repetitions of basic operations, gradual accumulation of skills and knowledge. You present it to the guild for judgment, and master craftsmen examine it carefully. They check the joints, looking for gaps or weakness. They run their hands over the surfaces, feeling for roughness or unevenness. They assess the overall design and proportions. They discuss among themselves, comparing your work to their standards, and then comes their verdict. If you pass, if your masterpiece meets their standards, you're recognized as a journeyman. You're no longer an apprentice but a qualified craftsman, free to work for any master, to travel and practice your trade wherever it's needed. If you fail, and some do, you must continue as an apprentice, improving your skills, eventually creating another masterpiece for reassessment. The end of your apprenticeship is not dramatic or sudden. There's no moment when everything clicks into place, no revelation where you suddenly feel like a true craftsman. Instead, there's simply a gradual recognition that you can do the work, that you understand the craft, that you're ready for the next stage. 7 years of daily practice, of patient learning, of gradual improvement, have transformed you from an ignorant boy into a competent craftsman. But becoming a journeyman is not the end of learning. It's just the end of the beginning. There's still much to learn, skills to refine, experience to gain. Some journeymen remain journeymen all their lives, working for masters, never establishing their own workshops. Others eventually become masters themselves, taking on their own apprentices, perpetuating the cycle of teaching and learning that maintains the craft across generations. Your 7 years of apprenticeship are complete. You've learned patience, precision, and persistence. You've developed skills in your hands and knowledge in your mind. You understand not just how to work wood, but why certain techniques work, how to solve problems, how to create objects that are both functional and beautiful. This understanding didn't come quickly or easily. It came through years of repetition, through countless mistakes and corrections, through the slow accumulation of experience that can't be rushed or shortcut. Beyond the craft itself, apprenticeship meant living within a particular social structure, following strict hierarchies, and navigating the complex relationships between master, journeyman, apprentices, and the wider community. Understanding this social dimension is essential to understanding the full experience of medieval apprenticeship. Your day begins and ends according to the master's household. You wake when the household wakes. You eat when and what the household eats. You sleep when the household sleeps. Your life is not your own in any meaningful sense. You exist within the master's authority, and this authority extends to nearly every aspect of your existence. The master is simultaneously your employer, your teacher, your landlord, and a kind of substitute father. He's responsible for your training, but also for your general welfare, your moral education, and your behavior. If you cause trouble in the town, the master is called to account. If you fall ill, the master is expected to provide care. This comprehensive authority reflects the medieval understanding of household structure, where the head of household bore responsibility for all who lived under his roof. This authority is usually exercised benevolently but firmly. The master wants you to succeed because your success reflects well on him and his teaching. A master who trains successful apprentices gains reputation and can attract better future apprentices. But he also demands obedience, hard work, and respect. Challenging his authority or failing to follow his instructions results in punishment, verbal reprimands, extra work, sometimes physical discipline that would be considered unacceptable today, but was normal in medieval times. The relationship with journeymen is different but also hierarchical. Journeymen are skilled craftsmen who work for the master, earning wages rather than receiving training. They're above you in status and skill, but they're not authority figures in the same way the master is. They're more like older brothers or mentors, teaching you practical skills, answering your questions, occasionally covering for small mistakes before the master notices. Some journeymen are good teachers, patient and willing to explain things carefully. Others are less helpful, impatient with apprentice clumsiness, more concerned with their own work than with your education. You learn to read their moods, to know when to ask questions and when to stay quiet and watch. The relationship is often friendly but never equal. They can instruct you, criticize you, assign you tasks. You must respect their greater experience and skill. Relations with other apprentices are the most equal, though the hierarchy remains even here. An apprentice who's been in the workshop longer has status over newer apprentices. The older apprentice might boss younger ones around, assign them the worst tasks, claim better spaces for sleeping or eating. This isn't official, but it's understood and accepted. You endured it when you were the newer apprentice. Now, if you're more senior, you exercise the same informal authority. Friendships between apprentices can form, but they're complicated by the competitive element. Only one of you might eventually become a master in this town. You're being evaluated and compared constantly. The master notices who works harder, who learns faster, who shows better judgment. This creates subtle tensions, even between apprentices who generally get along. The master's family is part of your daily life, but occupies a strange position relative to you. The master's wife is responsible for the household, cooking, cleaning, managing servants if there are any. You're not exactly a member of the family, but you're not exactly a servant either. You eat at the family table, but at the lowest position. You sleep in the house, but in the plainest space. You might help with household chores, but you're primarily there to learn the craft. The master's wife might treat you with maternal kindness, or she might resent the additional burden of feeding and housing you. Her attitude can significantly affect your daily comfort. A kind master's wife makes meals more pleasant, might give you extra food when you're working especially hard, might care for you when you're ill. A resentful or indifferent one makes your life harder, provides minimal food, shows no concern for your welfare beyond what's absolutely required. If the master has children, you occupy an ambiguous position relative to them. You're older than some, younger than others. The master's sons, if they're learning the craft, are your fellow apprentices. But they're also the master's children, which gives them special status. They might eventually inherit the workshop, so challenging them or outshining them too obviously is politically unwise. The master's daughters are separate from workshop life, though you see them daily. Romantic interest in them would be completely inappropriate and would risk severe punishment or expulsion. Your contact with the wider community comes primarily through work-related interactions. You deliver finished pieces to customers. You purchase materials from suppliers. You might attend church with the master's household. These interactions teach you the social skills necessary for a craftsman. How to speak respectfully to people of different social classes. How to represent the workshop properly. How to navigate the social hierarchies of a medieval town. The guild system provides structure and support, but also constraint. Guild regulations dictate many aspects of your training. How long your apprenticeship must last, what you must learn, what fees must be paid. The guild protects you from some forms of abuse. A master who fails to properly train his apprentices will face guild censure. But the guild also limits your freedom. You can't practice the craft without guild membership. You can't work for less than guild-established rates. You must follow guild rules about quality, business practices, and behavior. Religious observance is woven into daily life. The workshop might have a patron saint, with feast days celebrating that saint. Sunday work is generally forbidden, both by religious law and guild regulation, though urgent situations might require some Sunday labour. You attend church services with the master's household, participate in religious festivals, observe fasting days. Religion isn't separate from work life. It's integrated into it, providing rhythm and meaning. Holidays and festivals provide breaks from the usual routine. On major feast days, you might have the day off, or at least reduced work. These occasions include celebratory meals, perhaps entertainment, time to socialize with other apprentices and young people from other crafts. These social occasions are important for your development. You're learning to interact with the wider community, making connections that might prove valuable later in your career. You have almost no money during your apprenticeship. The master provides food and shelter. You don't receive wages. Occasionally, the master might give you a small amount of money for personal needs, or customers might give you tips when you deliver work. But these amounts are minimal. You're economically dependent on the master, and this dependency reinforces the hierarchical relationship. This lack of money means you have no real independence. You can't purchase luxuries, can't go to taverns with coin in your pocket, can't dress in fine clothes or own nice possessions. Your clothing is simple, practical, often hand-me-downs from the master's sons or simple garments made by the master's wife. You own almost nothing beyond these basic clothes, and perhaps a few small personal items. Despite this, you're learning valuable life skills beyond the craft. You're learning to manage relationships, to navigate hierarchies, to control your temper, to defer gratification, to persist through difficulty. You're learning to live in close quarters with others, to compromise, to get along with people you might not particularly like. These social and emotional skills are as important as woodworking skills for succeeding in adult life. The relationships you form during apprenticeship often last a lifetime. Fellow apprentices become lifelong friends and colleagues. The master, if the relationship is good, becomes a mentor and supporter throughout your career. Even journeymen you work with briefly might prove valuable contacts later. The workshop is not just a place of learning craft skills, it's where you form the social and professional networks that will support your career. Discipline is strict but usually predictable. You know what's expected of you, and if you meet those expectations, you're generally left alone to work. Problems arise when you fail to meet expectations. Being lazy, making careless mistakes, showing disrespect, or causing trouble outside the workshop. Punishment is swift and direct. The master might assign extra work, deny you small privileges, or, in serious cases, administer corporal punishment. Extreme offences might result in termination of your apprenticeship, which would be devastating both socially and economically. But most apprentices don't face these extreme consequences. Most learn to navigate the system, to meet expectations, to avoid serious trouble. You become socialized into the workshop culture, internalizing its values and norms. Working hard becomes habitual. Striving for quality becomes automatic. Respecting hierarchy becomes natural. You're being shaped not just as a craftsman but as a particular type of person. Disciplined, patient, respectful of expertise, committed to quality. The transition from apprentice to journeyman changes your social position significantly. As a journeyman, you earn wages. You can rent your own room rather than living with the master. You can eat at taverns, purchase better clothing, have some independence. You're still subject to guild regulations and the authority of master craftsmen, but you have much more personal freedom than as an apprentice. Some journeymen save money with the goal of eventually becoming masters themselves. This requires accumulating enough capital to establish a workshop, purchase tools and materials, and support yourself while building a customer base. It also requires guild approval, which might depend on demonstrating exceptional skill, having good reputation, and sometimes marrying the daughter of an existing master or buying the workshop of a retiring master. Other journeymen remain journeymen permanently, working for various masters, perhaps travelling to find work in different towns. This is a legitimate career path, not a failure. Skilled journeymen are valuable, can earn decent wages, and have more freedom than masters who are tied to a specific place and workshop. But it's generally considered better to become a master if possible, to have your own workshop, to train your own apprentices, to be your own authority. Looking back over your 7 years of apprenticeship, you realize how much you've changed. You entered as a boy, knowing nothing of the craft or the world of workshops. You leave as a young man, skilled in your trade, shaped by years of discipline and patient learning. The transformation isn't just in your hands and the skills they possess. It's in your character, your habits, your understanding of work and quality and persistence. To truly understand apprenticeship, we must examine the actual craft in greater detail. The specific techniques, the tools, the materials, the accumulated knowledge that takes years to master. Let's explore these elements slowly, understanding why each requires so much time and practice to learn properly. Wood itself is the fundamental material, and understanding wood is foundational to all woodworking. Different species have different properties. Oak is strong and dense but difficult to work. Pine is softer and easier but less durable. Ash is flexible and shock-resistant, ideal for tool handles. Cherry is beautiful and stable, perfect for fine furniture. Learning to identify these woods by sight, by weight, by grain pattern, by smell when cut, this knowledge takes years of exposure. But knowing species is just the beginning. Within each species, individual boards vary significantly. The same tree will yield boards with different characteristics depending on where in the tree they came from. Boards cut from the center of the log, heartwood, are more stable and durable than boards from the outer layers, sapwood. Boards with knots require different treatment than clear boards. Grain that runs straight is easier to work than grain that curves or swirls. You learn to examine each board before using it. You look at the end grain, which reveals how the board was cut from the log. Quarter-sawn boards, cut perpendicular to the growth rings, are more stable than flat-sawn boards cut parallel to the rings. You check for defects, knots that might fall out, cracks that might spread, warping that might worsen. You consider how each board's characteristics affect its suitable uses. Then there's moisture content. Green wood, fresh from the tree, is perhaps 50% water by weight. As it dries, it shrinks, and this shrinkage is uneven. Wood shrinks much more across the grain than along it. This differential shrinkage causes warping, splitting, and movement. Properly seasoned wood, dried slowly over months or years, is stable and workable. But understanding how wood moves, how to account for seasonal expansion and contraction in your designs, how to prevent problems from moisture changes, this requires experience and careful observation. Tools are extensions of your hands, and learning to use them properly takes thousands of repetitions. Consider the hand plane, one of the most basic woodworking tools. It looks simple, a wooden or metal body containing a sharp blade that protrudes slightly from the bottom. Push it across wood, and it shaves off a thin layer, smoothing the surface. But using a plane well requires understanding many subtle factors. The blade must be perfectly sharp and set at the correct depth. Too deep and the plane will catch and tear the grain. Too shallow and it will barely cut. The angle of attack matters. You must push the plane in the direction of the grain, or it will tear the wood fibers. The pressure matters. Too much, and the plane will dig in. Too little, and it won't cut efficiently. The length of the stroke matters. Short strokes create uneven surfaces. Long, smooth strokes create flat planes. Your body position matters. Feet positioned correctly, weight shifting smoothly as you push, arms and shoulders working together. The sound of the plane changes as it cuts properly or struggles. The feel in your hands tells you when something is wrong. The curls of wood shaving that come off the plane indicate quality of cut. They should be thin, even, unbroken ribbons. All of this must become second nature, automatic, requiring no conscious thought, and that takes years of practice. Joinery is perhaps the most complex aspect of woodworking because it involves precision in 3 dimensions and requires both planning and execution skills. Consider a simple mortise and tenon joint. You must mark both pieces accurately, ensuring they're positioned correctly relative to the overall assembly. You must cut the mortise straight and true, with parallel sides and a flat bottom. You must cut the tenon with 4 surfaces, the shoulders and cheeks, that are all square to each other and precisely sized to fit the mortise. If the mortise is off-center, the joint will be weak or the pieces won't align properly. If the mortise isn't straight, the tenon won't fit or will fit loosely. If the mortise is too deep, the tenon might bottom out before the shoulders seat. If the tenon shoulders aren't square, gaps will be visible. If the tenon cheeks aren't parallel, the joint will be twisted. Every dimension must be correct, Every surface must be true. Every cut must be precise. And that's for a simple joint. More complex joints, dovetails, bridle joints, finger joints, box joints, have additional challenges. Dovetails involve angled cuts that must be precisely matched between pins and tails. The angles must be consistent, the spacing must be exact, the depths must be controlled. A half-blind dovetail, used where you don't want the joint visible from one side, adds further complexity because part of the joint is hidden and must be cut by feel and measurement rather than sight. Learning to cut these joints well requires making them hundreds of times. Early attempts are crude and gappy. Gradually, with practice and correction, they improve. Your saw cuts become more precise. Your chisel work becomes more controlled. Your marking becomes more accurate. But it takes years before your joints are consistently tight, strong, and beautiful enough to be worthy of fine furniture. Sharpening is its own skill, seemingly simple but actually demanding. A sharp tool requires an extremely fine edge, free from chips or irregularities, polished to eliminate microscopic roughness. Creating this edge requires working the tool against progressively finer abrasive stones, maintaining the correct angle throughout, ensuring the entire edge is sharpened evenly. You start with a coarse stone to establish the basic bevel angle. Then you move to medium stones to refine it. Finally, you use fine stones to create the polished edge. Each stage requires multiple strokes, maintaining constant angle and pressure. The motion must be smooth and controlled. You must periodically check your progress, feeling the edge for burrs, examining it in the light. When it's truly sharp, it will easily slice paper, will shave hair from your arm, will cut wood with minimal force. But sharpness doesn't last. Tools dull with use. You must sharpen them frequently, sometimes multiple times in a day if you're doing extensive work. Learning to recognize when a tool needs sharpening, learning to sharpen quickly and efficiently without wasting time, learning to maintain your stones themselves. All of this is part of the craft. Design is perhaps the most subtle skill to learn, because it's partly analytical and partly intuitive. A piece of furniture must be functional, the right size for its purpose, strong enough to support expected loads, durable enough to last. But it should also be aesthetically pleasing, well-proportioned, balanced, harmonious in its parts. And it should be buildable, designed in a way that's actually feasible to construct with available tools and materials. Learning design means studying existing furniture, understanding why certain proportions look right, why certain constructions work. The master points out good and bad examples. See how this table's legs are too thin for its weight. It will wobble and eventually fail. Or, notice how the proportions of this chest are harmonious. The height relates to the width in a pleasing way. You learn traditional proportions and rules of thumb. Table height should be approximately 30 inches for comfortable eating. Chair seats should be 18 inches high. Drawer depth should increase from top to bottom in a chest. But you also learn when to break these rules, when unusual circumstances require different solutions. Design isn't just following formulas, it's understanding principles and applying them thoughtfully. Finishing, the final stage of creating a piece, has its own body of knowledge. Different finishes have different properties. Oil finishes penetrate the wood, enhancing grain while providing moderate protection. Varnishes sit on the surface, providing better protection, but potentially obscuring the wood's beauty. Wax provides a soft luster but little protection. Paint hides the wood entirely but allows decoration and colour. Preparing wood for finishing is critical. The surface must be absolutely smooth, free from tear-out, scratches or mill marks. Sanding progresses through increasingly fine grits, coarse to remove major imperfections, medium to smooth the surface, fine to eliminate scratches from previous grits. You must sand evenly, not creating dips or uneven areas. You must sand with the grain to avoid cross-grain scratches that will be visible under finish. Applying finish requires its own techniques. Oil should be applied liberally, allowed to soak in, then excess wiped away. Varnish should be applied in thin coats with a clean brush, with each coat lightly sanded when dry before applying the next. Paint requires proper preparation, priming, and multiple thin coats. Each type of finish has its quirks and requirements, and learning them takes practice and occasional failures. All of this knowledge, wood properties, tool use, joinery, sharpening, design, finishing, forms an interconnected whole. You can't truly master one aspect without understanding how it relates to others. Wood properties affect tool choice. Joint selection affects design possibilities. Finishing techniques affect how you prepare surfaces during construction. The craft is holistic, and understanding it fully requires years of experience seeing how all the pieces fit together. This is why apprenticeship takes 7 years or more. It's not that any individual skill is impossibly difficult. It's that there are so many skills, each requiring practice to master, each relating to others, the whole forming a complex body of knowledge that can only be absorbed gradually through long experience. Quick learning might give you basic competence, but mastery requires time, repetition, and the slow accumulation of understanding that comes from years of daily practice. As your apprenticeship draws to a close, you stand at a threshold between two phases of life. 7 years have passed since you arrived at the master's workshop as a boy who knew nothing of carpentry. Now you're a young man, skilled in your craft, ready to become a journeyman and begin the next chapter of your professional life. The transformation is profound but gradual, making it difficult to identify exactly when you became a craftsman. There was no single moment of revelation, no sudden understanding. Instead, there were 10,000 small moments, cuts that gradually became straighter, surfaces that gradually became smoother, joints that gradually became tighter. Progress measured in tiny increments, accumulating over years into genuine competence. Your hands show the transformation clearly. They're scarred from minor cuts and scrapes, calloused from constant tool use, marked by the inevitable accidents of workshop life. But they're also capable now. They can hold a plane properly, can guide a saw accurately, can feel subtle differences in wood surfaces. Your hands have become tools themselves, educated through years of use, responsive to the subtle demands of the craft. Your mind has been shaped as well. You think differently now than when you started. When you see a piece of furniture, you automatically analyze its construction. When you encounter a problem, you consider multiple solutions and their trade-offs. When you plan a project, you think through the sequence of operations, anticipating challenges, and selecting appropriate techniques. This thinking has become automatic, a habit of mind that serves you constantly. The patience you've developed is perhaps the most valuable transformation. You entered apprenticeship as a boy, naturally impatient, wanting quick results. The craft has taught you that quality takes time, that rushing leads to mistakes, that good work requires careful attention to each step. You've learned to find satisfaction in the process rather than just the result, to take pleasure in executing a technique properly even when it's routine, to accept that some things simply cannot be hurried. You've also developed persistence. In your early years, frustration came easily. A failed joint, a ruined piece, a task that seemed too difficult. These could discourage you, make you want to quit. But the structure of apprenticeship didn't allow quitting. You had to keep trying, keep practicing, keep working through difficulties. And gradually, you learned that persistence pays off, that problems that seem insurmountable can be solved with patient effort, that skills that seem impossibly difficult can be mastered through repetition. The discipline you've internalized will serve you throughout your life. You've learned to wake early and work hard, to maintain focus over long hours, to complete tasks thoroughly, even when you're tired or bored. You've learned to follow instructions precisely, to respect expertise, to control your impulses. These habits of discipline extend beyond woodworking. They're life skills that will serve you in any endeavor. Your judgment has matured through countless small decisions and their consequences. You've learned when to ask for help and when to figure things out yourself. You've learned to evaluate your own work critically, to recognize both its strengths and weaknesses. You've learned when to take your time and when to work efficiently, when to follow traditional methods and when to try something different. This judgment wasn't taught explicitly. It developed through experience, through making mistakes and learning from them. The social skills you've acquired are equally valuable. You've learned to work within a hierarchy, to accept authority, to collaborate with others. You've learned to communicate clearly about technical matters, to teach those with less knowledge, to learn from those with more. You've navigated the complex social world of the workshop, the household, the guild, and the wider community. These social skills will be essential as you progress in your career. As you prepare to become a journeyman, you're also preparing to leave the master's household. This separation is both exciting and unsettling. The workshop has been your home for 7 years. The master and his family, the journeyman, the other apprentices, these people have shaped your daily life. Leaving feels like leaving family, even though you're eager for the independence that comes with being a journeyman. Your masterpiece, now complete and judged, stands as a testament to your learning. Looking at it, you can see all the skills you've developed, the precise joinery, the smooth surfaces, the pleasing proportions, the careful finish. But you can also see, if you're honest with yourself, places where your work doesn't quite match the master's. Your skills are real but still developing. Becoming a journeyman doesn't mean you've learned everything. It means you've learned enough to continue learning independently. The years ahead will bring new challenges. As a journeyman, you'll work for different masters, experiencing different workshops, different approaches to the craft. You'll encounter projects that push your skills, problems you haven't faced before. You'll continue learning, refining your technique, expanding your knowledge. Some journeymen eventually become masters themselves, establishing workshops, training apprentices, perpetuating the cycle. Others remain journeymen, travelling, working where their skills are needed, living a less settled but perhaps more varied life. Whatever path you take, your apprenticeship has prepared you. You've learned not just how to work wood, but how to learn, how to persist, how to pay attention, how to improve. These meta skills, learning how to learn, developing the discipline and patience necessary for mastery, are perhaps more valuable than any specific woodworking technique. As you reflect on your 7 years of apprenticeship, you might remember specific moments. Your first successful joint, the first time the master praised your work, the satisfaction of completing your first small project independently. But mostly, you'll remember the daily rhythm, the morning sweeping, the careful observation, the endless practice, the patient repetition that gradually built your skills. The apprenticeship wasn't about exciting moments. It was about showing up every day, doing the work, learning gradually, persisting through difficulty. This slow, patient approach to learning is perhaps the deepest lesson of apprenticeship. In a world that often values speed and quick results, the craft teaches that some things cannot be rushed. Mastery takes time. Understanding develops gradually. Quality requires patience. These truths, learned through 7 years of daily practice, will serve you far beyond woodworking. And so your apprenticeship ends, not with drama or ceremony, but with quiet recognition that you're ready for the next stage. You pack your few belongings, thank the master and his family, say goodbye to your fellow apprentices and the journeyman. You step out into the wider world, carrying your skills and knowledge, ready to make your way as a craftsman. The workshop that was your world for 7 years will continue without you. New apprentices will arrive, will sweep the floors you swept, will practice the joints you practiced, will gradually develop the same skills you developed. The cycle continues, as it has for generations, as it will for generations more. Apprenticeship is not just a method of training, it's a tradition, a way of preserving and passing down knowledge, a system that has sustained craftsmanship through centuries. You're part of that tradition now. The skills in your hands were taught to your master by his master, who learned from his master before him, going back through generations. And someday, perhaps, you'll teach these same skills to your own apprentices, continuing the chain of knowledge that connects past to future. Sleep well tonight, understanding what it means to learn through patient practice, through daily repetition, through years of gradual improvement. The medieval apprentice's experience teaches us that real mastery comes not from talent or quick learning, but from persistence, patience, and the willingness to spend years learning a single craft thoroughly and well. Rest now, grateful that you don't have to spend 7 years learning one trade, but appreciating the dedication and patience of those who did, and who, through that patient learning, created the beautiful and functional objects that served their communities for generations.